Hey guys, tonight we slip into something a little heavier than usual. You're not climbing into a cozy fairy tale or wandering through the safe streets of some imagined city. You're drifting back billions of years into a restless, glowing planet that didn't even want life at first. Imagine standing on the edge of a shore where no grass grows, no birds sing, just the hiss of boiling oceans and the choking haze of volcanic breath. The air itself burns your throat, and the ground under your feet still remembers the meteor storms that shaped it. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive this little vacation spot, but don't worry. I'll guide you through. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing those check-ins from across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hover above Earth about 4.5 billion years ago. The planet spins fast, like a dizzy top, heat radiating out of cracks in the crust. Giant asteroids still slam into it, each one like a cosmic alarm clock reminding the planet that peace isn't on the schedule yet. Lava spills across jagged surfaces, black rock cooling just enough to crust over. You can almost hear it creak like a loaf of bread baking. Except this loaf weighs 6 sextillion tons. The oceans haven't really formed. Yet they're puddles of superheated water, trapped in steaming basins, constantly evaporating and condensing back into rain. Every thunderstorm feels like a world-ending event. Except the world hasn't even properly begun. The smell? Think of a mix between a gas station and a match factory, multiplied by 1,000. It's sulfur, methane, ammonia, all the scents your nose would vote against. And here's a neat fact. Historians still argue whether Earth ever had a full ocean of magma, covering the whole surface, or if it only looked like that in bursts. The idea of an entire planet glowing red like a lava lamp is pretty wild. But evidence is murky, literally buried under billions of years of geology. Meanwhile, up in the sky, there's no comforting moonlight. The moon itself has just formed, probably from a catastrophic collision with a Mars-sized rock. Imagine Earth getting sideswiped so hard that it spat out molten debris, which slowly gathered into that silvery companion we now take for granted. Without that accident, tides wouldn't exist the way we know them, and maybe life would never have found its rhythm. You wander across an early continent, though calling it a continent is generous. It's more like a crusty scab floating on molten soup. The ground shakes often, ridges push up overnight, and entire stretches of land sink back into the mantle without asking for permission. It's hard to believe this unstable place is the foundation for everything you know. Now, here's the quirky tidbit. Some scientists think the very first beach on Earth was made of green sand, not the familiar yellow. That's because a mineral called olivine was more common back then, and it sparkled emerald under the angry sun. Imagine walking along a shoreline glittering like crushed bottles. Except your footprints would last about 3 seconds before boiling water swallowed them. The earth cools slowly, grudgingly. Clouds build up. Rain pours down in endless cycles, and at last, the first true oceans settle into the scars of impact craters. These oceans are thick, almost soupy, filled with dissolved minerals that give them a metallic tang. You can picture dipping your hand in and pulling it out stained orange, like rust. Not exactly your dream vacation. Unless you're a bacteria auditioning for a role in evolution, and here's where the sly sarcasm comes in because you're floating through this. Nightmare spa thinking. Wow, what a perfect setup for human life someday. Except if Earth had stayed like this, with its poisonous skies and broiling seas. The only thing we'd have invented is a shorter way to die. But Earth is patient. It has billions of years to waste, reshaping itself again and again. Volcanoes cool into mountains, only to be ground back down by acid rain. Oceans deepen, lightning forks through the skies. And somewhere in all that chaos, the ingredients for life are quietly being mixed. You don't see it yet, but the stage is being set. And if you lean in close, if you let the steam fog your imagination, you can almost sense the future, humming beneath your feet. The sense that this dangerous, fiery beginning isn't just destruction. It's potential waiting for its cue. You're still drifting, but time has leapt forward. The planet is calmer now, or at least it's pretending to be. The crust has thickened enough that oceans stretch across vast basins, reflecting a sun that's finally settled into a steady rhythm. The air, still a choking cocktail of gases. But at least it no longer smells like a dragon's stomach on taco night. You squint through the haze and notice something strange life's very first breath is stirring. Not life, as in dolphins leaping or flowers blooming, but life as in microbes. So small you'd need a microscope the size of a time machine to see them. They float invisibly in the oceans. Little chemical gamblers tossing dice made of carbon and hydrogen. Each one is fragile, laughably tiny. And yet, they're about to pull off a trick that will rewrite Earth forever. Here's a mainstream historical fact. You might have heard, around 3.5 billion years ago, these microbes, cyanobacteria, started producing oxygen through photosynthesis. Yes, those slimy little mats of goo were the first planetary terraformers. You'd think they'd get a round of applause. But their great oxygenation event was more like an apocalypse for everything that wasn't ready to breathe it. For billions of years, oxygen was toxic to most life. So these early microbes basically triggered one of the first mass extinctions. Picture that, the planet's earliest green movement was an accidental act of mass murder. Still, you trail your hand along a warm tide pool, and you feel the water fizzing faintly. It's oxygen bubbling out, invisible but relentless. The smell of iron hangs heavy, because all that fresh oxygen is rusting the oceans themselves. Seriously, imagine seas turning a deep reddish brown, like Earth had brewed an entire planet-sized vat of tomato soup. Historians still argue whether those banded iron formations we find in rocks today were steady drips of oxygen or sudden bursts, like someone shaking up a soda bottle and letting it explode. And here's the quirky tidbit for tonight: stromatolites. If you've never seen one, they look like lumpy stone pancakes stacked in shallow water. But they're not just rocks. They're ancient skyscrapers, built by colonies of microbes, layering themselves for sunlight. You can still spot living stromatolites in a few corners of the modern world, like Shark Bay in Australia. Imagine time-traveling microbes, so stubborn that they refused to update their building style for 3 billion years. You float further, and the skies slowly shift color. At first, they're a sickly orange, thick with methane. But over millions of years, oxygen bleeds into the mix, and the sky grows paler, bluer. The air would still choke you, but you'd at least recognize it as the ancestor of what you breathe now. And with oxygen comes something else: ozone, that invisible sunscreen layer. Before ozone, the sun's ultraviolet rays scorch the surface like a laser. With ozone, Earth starts to feel less like a death trap and more like a cradle. It's funny, isn't it? You're standing here, watching bacteria burp oxygen, And you realize they're the unsung authors of your own lungs. Without their relentless photosynthesis, you'd have no forests, no campfires, no morning jogs where you pretend you like running. Everything starts here, with microbes stubbornly pumping gas into the atmosphere. And yet, it wasn't all progress. The great oxidation event nearly froze Earth solid. Extra oxygen removed methane, which had been keeping the planet warm. Suddenly, glaciers crept across continents and oceans iced over. Imagine being one of those microbes, throwing a housewarming party for oxygen, only to plunge the whole planet into a snowball state. Oops. You crouch at the edge of one of those icy seas, listening to the faint crackle of air bubbles trapped in the frost. The silence is eerie, broken only by the slow groan of glaciers grinding against rock. And still, hidden beneath, life endures. It doesn't just endure, it experiments. New metabolic tricks evolve, new chemical pathways emerge. The stage is growing crowded, even if you can't see it yet. And here's where the gentle sarcasm slips in. You think humans are clever with our Wi-Fi and our air conditioning. But these microbes literally invented the idea of shaping an entire atmosphere just so they could keep multiplying. You don't get more ambitious than that. Billions of years later, when you take a breath walking through your neighborhood or hiking a trail, you're inhaling the legacy of those first invisible pioneers. They're still here, by the way cyanobacteria haven't gone extinct. They're just quietly sharing the world with you, probably judging your life choices. As you stand at the water's edge, the waves shimmer strangely, colors shifting between rust red and green blue. The planet is no longer the fiery, molten chaos you first stepped into. Now it's becoming something subtler, a place where invisible life is sculpting the future with patience you can barely imagine. And if you close your eyes, you can almost hear them tiny, silent architects of everything to come, humming away in the ancient tide. You linger at the shore, and time blurs again, sweeping you forward like a tide you can't resist. The once rusty seas are now alive with shadows, strange creatures drifting, crawling, and pulsing in forms so alien you have to blink twice to believe them. Welcome to the era of monsters of the deep, a time when oceans ruled everything and the land was still just an empty stage, waiting for its first actors. Picture it, the Cambrian seas, about 540 million years ago. If you dipped your toes in here, you wouldn't meet a goldfish or a dolphin. Instead, you'd brush against trilobites armored, bug-like scuttlers with many legs and a habit of rolling into balls like anxious pill bugs. They're everywhere, clinking across the seafloor like living coins. And fun fact, trilobites developed some of the first complex eyes in history. Compound eyes made of crystal lenses. Humans like to brag about our vision. But trilobites were peeking at the world long before us, basically inventing the concept of staring contests. You drift deeper, and now things get weird. Anomalocaris swims past a meter-long predator with googly stalk eyes and spiny front arms perfect for snatching up prey. To you, it looks like a shrimp that lost an argument with a blender. To trilobites, it looks like the stuff of nightmares. Historians still argue whether the Cambrian explosion, the sudden burst of diverse life in these oceans, was truly an explosion, or just a slow buildup that looks sudden because the fossil record is patchy. Either way, it feels like you've stepped into an alien aquarium, one where evolution is throwing spaghetti at the wall just to see what sticks. And here's your quirky tidbit. Waxia. Imagine a soft, slug-like creature covered in tiny, armored scales and a few big spikes, sticking out like awkward party hats. Scientists debate whether it was related to mollusks, worms, or some evolutionary dead end that fizzled out. Either way, if you stepped on it barefoot, you definitely regret it. The water around you sparkles with plankton, microscopic drifters feeding this new food web. Jellyfish float past, looking strangely familiar, since they haven't changed much in 500 million years. That's right, jellyfish are basically living fossils. Like someone hit pause on their evolutionary journey. They were here before dinosaurs, before trees, and they'll probably outlast humans. Comforting, isn't it? Knowing your apocalypse survivor buddy might just be a wobbly, brainless blob. You brush your hand along the sandy seafloor, and something squirms, an early worm. Maybe one of the ancestors of every segmented creature alive today. Worms aren't glamorous, but they were game changers, burrowing into sediment and recycling nutrients. Without them, the ocean floor would have been a graveyard of waste. Instead, it became fertile ground for more experiments in life. Above you, sunlight filters down, and creatures dart through the beams. Hallucigenia wriggles past an inch long, oddball with spines on its back and stubby legs underneath. For decades, paleontologists weren't even sure which way was up. They literally reconstructed it upside down in museums, only to later realize the legs were spines and the spines were legs. Talk about an evolutionary prank. And then there's Apobinia. Oh boy, 5 eyes. A long, flexible proboscis ending in a claw. Like an elephant trunk designed by a committee. You can't help but laugh at it, its evolution doodling in the margins. And somehow those doodles actually swam around. Here's where the gentle sarcasm sneaks in. You think you're Monday. Meetings are chaotic. But try surviving in a sea where your neighbor has 5 eyes. Your cousin wears armor, and your landlord is a worm tunneling through your floor. Evolution at this stage wasn't elegant. It was messy, over the top, and wildly experimental. Still, amidst the chaos, something profound is happening. Predators and prey are inventing the arms race. Creatures grow armor, so predators evolve claws. Eyes evolve to spot danger, so camouflage evolves to hide from those eyes. For the first time in Earth's history, life isn't just drifting, it's competing. And competition means innovation. You float a little longer, watching the shadows thicken as day fades into prehistoric night. The water hums with quiet motion, plankton glowing faintly in bioluminescent flashes. It feels oddly modern, like looking out over today's ocean at night. Except the shapes are utterly foreign. And you realize something unsettling. Humans weren't inevitable. Life could have stopped here in the oceans, perfectly content with trilobites and tentacled oddities. The land could have stayed barren forever. But Earth isn't done experimenting. Somewhere in these waters, tiny fins are already twitching, hinting at legs to come. Somewhere in the mud, roots are dreaming of forests. You just can't see it yet. For now, you drift with the monsters of the deep, lulled by their alien grace, knowing they were here long before you and might have been enough all on their own. The oceans are still buzzing with trilobites, worms, and those 5-eyed oddballs. But as you drift forward in time, something stirs at the shoreline. Waves crash on beaches of green sand. And for the first time, little tendrils reach upward. Plants tiny at first. Just mossy mats clinging stubbornly to damp rock are making their landfall. You lean in, squinting, and realize this is the first greenery Earth has ever seen. A planet that once glowed with lava and rust-red oceans now dares to wear a hint of green, and once plants show up, the insects aren't far behind. But here's the kicker. These aren't your average backyard bugs. No dainty ladybugs or FLIs buzzing your picnic. Instead, dragonflies with wingspans wider than your arm hover over swampy forests. Millipedes as long as a car slither between tree roots. If you thought your attic spider was intimidating, imagine one the size of a dinner plate casually strolling across your ceiling. Not exactly the kind of roommate you'd tolerate. The reason for these oversized creepy crawlies? Oxygen. Remember those microbes back in Section 2? The stromatolite architects burping out oxygen into the air? Well, their long-term project has paid off. Oxygen levels in this Carboniferous period were so high, around 35%, compared to today's 21, that it supercharged insect growth. Insects don't have lungs. They breathe through little tubes in their bodies. More oxygen meant bigger bugs, which is scientifically cool, but personally horrifying. Meanwhile, the forests themselves are lush, alien jungles. Towering lycophytes, plants related to modern. Club mosses stretch upward like skyscrapers of green bark. Some of them grow over 100 feet tall, forming dense canopies that block the sun. Beneath their shade, ferns unfurl in massive fronds, and early amphibians slither out of the water to rest on spongy ground. Amphibians are the bold pioneers here, bridging sea and land with their awkward waddles. Their skin glistens, their eyes bulge, and they're constantly torn between two worlds. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Fossils from this period show footprints preserved in mud, the first evidence of vertebrates walking across solid earth. Imagine being one of those early tetrapods, dragging yourself out of the surf like, yeah, land looks nice. Let's give it a try. That single, hesitant crawl across the shoreline is basically the reason you're listening to this bedtime story instead of bubbling in some tidal pool. And the quirky tidbit, some of those giant dragonflies like Meganeura probably weren't graceful flyers at all. Recent studies suggest their huge wings made them clumsy, more like living kites than skilled predators. So, if you're picturing them zipping around like helicopters, adjust your mental image to something that occasionally crashes into trees. Still terrifying, though. Historians still argue whether forests grew so rapidly during this time that they altered the climate by sucking up too much carbon dioxide. Some evidence suggests Earth plunged into an ice age partly because plants got too good at their job. You can almost imagine the trees whispering, "Oops, we overdid it." That's the kind of overachievement no one asked for. You wander deeper into this swampy, primeval world. The air is heavy, humid, and buzzing with insect wings. Frogs the size of small dogs croak in the underbrush, and armored fish still patrol the rivers. You step carefully, because the mud squelches beneath your feet, leaving deep prints that make you wonder if you'll fossilize there too. It's easy to think of this as a halfway stage, a warm-up act before dinosaurs take the spotlight. But for millions of years, this was the world. Amphibians ruled. Insects ruled. Forests blanketed entire continents. And their decaying remains would one day form the coal seams humans depend on. Every time you flip on a light switch powered by coal, you're borrowing energy from this exact moment in Earth's history. And here comes the gentle sarcasm. So the next time someone complains about the power bill, just remind them their electricity comes from dead ferns that lived 300 million years ago. That should lighten the mood at dinner. As you look around, something nags at you. It feels familiar. The forests, the buzzing insects, the croaking. Amphibians, it's almost like Earth has already built a template for the modern world. But it's raw, exaggerated, like an artist's rough sketch. You sense that evolution is testing the Water's literally deciding whether land is worth the hassle and judging by the teeming life around you. The answer is yes. The land has been claimed. Earth's oceans still rule the majority of the planet. But now the forests rise like emerald banners. Insects buzz in oversized glory, and amphibians shuffle awkwardly, but determinedly onto solid ground. It's a strange, swampy paradise, and it feels like the curtain has just lifted on a whole new act. The swamps hum with dragonflies and croaking amphibians. But as you drift further through time, the air grows hotter, the forests denser, and the ground begins to tremble with heavier footsteps. You glance up and realize you're no longer sharing Earth with oversized bugs and slimy pioneers. You're standing in the shadow of giants. The dinosaurs have arrived, and the planet has never looked stranger, louder, or more alive. The forests of the Carboniferous give way to new landscapes, open plains, fern prairies, and towering conifers stretching toward the sun. The air feels heavy, thick with warmth, and every breeze smells of resin and damp greenery. But all of that fades as you notice the thundering sound that shakes the ground beneath you. A herd of sauropods trundles by, their long necks swaying like cranes over the treetops. Each step sinks deep into the mud, leaving prints the size of bathtubs. You instinctively hold your breath, even though they're herbivores. Being stepped on by something as tall as a building isn't exactly on your bucket list. Mainstream fact time. Dinosaurs first appeared about 230 million years ago, during the Triassic period, and while they started small, they quickly diversified into some of the largest animals to ever walk the earth. Sauropods like Argentinosaurus may have weighed up to 100 tons. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than 15 elephants, or about the same weight as your uncle's old RV, plus everything he packs into it, just in case. But the dinosaurs weren't just big, they were wildly diverse. Some sprouted horns and frills like Triceratops, their skulls shaped like living shields. Others sprouted feathers, the ancestors of today's birds strutting around with flamboyant plumage. And of course, there's the celebrity guest of every child's imagination, Tyrannosaurus rex, whose bite force could crush a car like a soda can. You wander through this world amazed, but also painfully aware that you're more snack than spectator here. Here's the quirky tidbit. Despite their fearsome reputation, some paleontologists think T. rex might have had breath so terrible it could literally kill. Their mouths were so riddled with bacteria that a bite could cause septic shock. So if you didn't die from the bite itself, the infection might finish the job. Imagine weaponized bad breath kind of makes your coworker. With coffee breath seem harmless. Historians still argue whether dinosaurs were more like sluggish reptiles or warm-blooded, active creatures. Some evidence suggests they had high metabolisms, feathers for insulation, and complex behaviors, meaning they might have been more bird-like than lizard-like, which means your backyard pigeons are basically tiny, judgmental dinosaurs glaring at you from the power lines. You walk along a riverbank where smaller dinosaurs dart between ferns fast, agile hunters with sharp claws and keen eyes. The air fills with their calls, chirps, honks, and low growls. Some sound surprisingly bird-like, a reminder that evolution doesn't erase its drafts. It just rewrites them into new editions. Overhead, pterosaurs ride the thermals, their wings vast sheets of skin stretched over elongated fingers. One swoops low, its beak snapping at fish in the water. Before flapping back into the hazy sky, the world feels balanced in a strange way. Dinosaurs dominate the land, Flying reptiles command the skies, and marine reptiles like Mosasaurus and Ichthyosaurus rule the seas. Humans, not even a whisper on the wind. And if you're honest, it feels like Earth could have ended the story right here. Dinosaurs had everything covered: brains, brawn, beauty, and bite. You crouch beside a nest of eggs, each one larger than a football. The shells are warm, the ground humming faintly with life. It strikes you that dinosaurs weren't just monsters, they were parents. Fossil evidence shows some species guarded their young, built nests, and even cared for hatchlings. Imagine a Maiasaura, nicknamed the Good Mother Lizard, tenderly feeding her young with chewed-up plants. It's a softer, stranger truth that complicates the Hollywood image of roaring beasts. The night falls, and the forest glows with fireflies or maybe just glowing fungi. You sit back, listening to the distant thunder of footsteps, the rush of wings, the quiet snorts of giants sleeping under the stars. The earth feels full, rich, and content, as though the dinosaurs are its masterpiece. And here's where the sarcasm sneaks in. Humans like to think we're the pinnacle of evolution. But looking at a sauropod stretching, its neck 40 feet into the air, just 2 pluck leaves, you can't help but wonder if we're more like the afterthought. Honestly, who needs skyscrapers when you can be the skyscraper? You realize something else too. Life doesn't have a plan. It's not moving toward some goal called humanity. It's experimenting. Dinosaurs were one of the boldest experiments, and they lasted over 150 million years. Compare that to the mere 300,000 years modern humans have been around. Dinosaurs had the real lease on Earth. We're just the short-term renters who think we own the place. The forest settles into silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves as another giant grazes nearby. You lean back against a tree trunk, the night air warm and buzzing with unseen insects, and wonder if this was where the story ended. Would Earth have missed us at all? The forest is calm tonight, but the calm won't last. You sense that the world is about to be reset in the most brutal way possible. One moment, dinosaurs rule the land, confident in their dominance, and the next, the sky itself turns traitor. You glance upward and see a fireball streaking across the heavens, brighter than anything you've ever witnessed. It isn't just a shooting star, it's the harbinger of an ending. 66 million years ago, a rock about 6 miles wide slammed into Earth near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. To you, it looks like the sky cracking open. The asteroid tears through the atmosphere, glowing so hot it could blind you, before smashing into the sea with a force greater than 1 billion nuclear bombs. The impact vaporizes rock, boils water, and flings molten debris across the planet. For a few terrifying minutes, Earth itself screams. Here's your mainstream fact: that asteroid carved out the Chicxulub crater, over 90 miles wide. The energy released was enough to wipe out roughly 75% of all species, including almost every dinosaur that didn't evolve into a bird. If you've ever heard someone say chickens are modern dinosaurs, they're not joking. Those clucking little breakfast providers are survivors of one of the most catastrophic days in Earth's history. The quirky tidbit: some researchers think the asteroid struck Earth at the worst possible angle, round 60 degrees, maximizing the destruction. Any shallower or steeper, and maybe more creatures would have survived. Instead, the angle ensured maximum debris was flung into the atmosphere, darkening the skies and choking the planet. Imagine losing your species not just because of bad luck, but because of geometry. Historians still argue whether it was the asteroid alone or a combination of disasters. like massive volcanic eruptions in India's Deccan Traps. That finished the dinosaurs. Some say the asteroid was the final knockout punch. Others argue the planet was already staggering from volcanic gas and climate shifts. Either way, the result is the same: the great reptilian empires fall. You sit in the aftermath. The sky is black, the air clogged with soot and ash. Temperatures plummet as sunlight struggles to pierce the thick shroud. Forests wither, oceans acidify, and food chains collapse like dominoes. The thunder of dinosaur herds is gone, replaced by silence broken only by the occasional cry of desperate survivors. And yet, here's the strange comfort: extinction clears the stage. With the giants gone, smaller creatures creep from the shadows. Mammals, once scurrying rodent-like things hiding from dinosaur claws, now seize the opportunity. You crouch beside a furry little animal gnawing on a seed. It looks ordinary, but it carries the blueprint for something extraordinary. You wander through the smoldering ruins of what was once a vibrant dinosaur world. Charred tree trunks stand like blackened monuments. Rivers run murky with ash, and the air smells of sulfur and damp decay. It's haunting, but you can almost hear the whispers of resilience. Life beaten down is not giving up. And here's where the sarcasm slides in. People love to imagine humans as inevitable, like the universe was just waiting for us. But honestly, if that asteroid had missed, Earth might still be a dinosaur planet. No smartphones, no Wi-Fi, no online arguments about pineapple on pizza, just endless herds of sauropods, munching leaves while raptors sharpened their claws. You're not the climax of the story. You're the plot twist that almost didn't happen. The night settles heavy. The stars are faint behind the haze. And the silence feels deeper than anything you've known. Earth has hit the reset button in fire and fury. But in the cracks left behind, new beginnings stir. Small mammals huddle, fungi thrive on decay, and plants ready themselves to recolonize. You close your eyes, listening to the quiet. The age of dinosaurs has ended. But the story hasn't. It's just shifted, like a new act waiting in the wings. Somewhere in the rubble, evolution is sketching its next draft. And though you don't know it yet, those sketches will eventually include you. The ash has settled, the forests are scarred, and the thunder of dinosaur footsteps is gone. The world feels emptier, like a theater after the actors have left the stage. But if you look closer, life is stirring again, not with the giants of old, but with the small and scrappy survivors who slipped through the cracks of disaster. You kneel beside a burrow, and out creeps a mammal, furry and mouse-like, sniffing the air with twitchy whiskers. It looks fragile, laughably tiny compared to a T-Rex. And yet, this little creature is about to inherit the Earth. The mammals that survive the asteroid winter are opportunists, omnivores who will eat insects, seeds, or whatever scraps they can find. They breed quickly, they hide in burrows, and they don't need much space to survive. It's a strategy that pays off in a world stripped bare. You watch one scurry through the underbrush, its belly full of beetles, and realize you're looking at the blueprint for all future mammals, bats, whales, elephants, and yes, eventually humans. Mainstream fact: the earliest primates appeared not long after the extinction event. Small creatures that looked a lot like tree shrews or lemurs. They spent their days clambering through branches, their hands already adapting for grasping, their eyes adjusting to judge depth and distance. These traits, climbing, gripping, seeing in 3 dimensions, were the foundation for the line that would one day lead to you. And the quirky tidbit: scientists found a fossilized mammal, jawbone in Madagascar, that belonged to a creature called Ventana certici. It had enormous cheekbones and specialized teeth, suggesting it chewed tough plants like a prehistoric nutcracker. What's fascinating is that it survived quietly, while dinosaurs were still stomping around, and then thrived after they were gone. Basically, Ventana was the original "I told you so" survivor. Historians still argue whether mammals only flourished because the dinosaurs were wiped out, or whether they were already evolving toward dominance and just needed a push. Was the asteroid the key, or were mammals destined to rise anyway? That debate still simmers, but standing here, you can't help thinking chance played a much bigger role than destiny. You wander through recovering forests, where ferns give way to flowering plants' angiosperms that spread rapidly, painting the land with new colors. Birds, the lucky dinosaur descendants, sing in the trees, their songs thin but insistent. Reminders that not every dynasty fell. Small mammals dart between roots, nibbling seeds and hiding from sharp-eyed hawks. The air feels fresher, lighter. Oxygen levels balance, and climates stabilize. Within a few million years, the Earth no longer looks like a burned ruin. It's alive again, though quieter, humbler. You squat near a stream and watch an early ungulate, a hoofed mammal, lap at the water. It's clumsy, but it will one day give rise to horses, deer, and cattle. Beside it, a tiny primate bounds through branches, its tail flicking for balance. You smile, knowing it's a distant cousin of yours, though it would never recognize you as kin. And here's where sarcasm sneaks in. People like to imagine mammals were meant to take over, as if the universe had us penciled in on its to-do list. But the truth? If you were betting back then, you'd probably put your money on crocodiles. They survived the asteroid just fine, after all. And they still look like prehistoric bouncers hanging around the planet's doorways. Yet somehow, mammals got lucky. And we've been milking that luck, literally, for millions of years. Night falls again, and you sit listening to the quiet rustle of undergrowth. The world doesn't roar anymore, it scurries. It squeaks, it chirps. But that quiet is deceptive. In the shadows, mammals are multiplying, diversifying, testing out new shapes and sizes. Some return to the seas as proto-whales. Some take to the skies as bats, and some stay in the trees, practicing the art of climbing. You lean back against a tree, the stars glittering above, and realize you're witnessing the start of a new dynasty, not of giants, but of survivors. The mammal's rise isn't dramatic or flashy. It's quiet, persistent, and stubborn. And in that stubbornness, you catch a glimpse of something familiar. The spark of cleverness. The spark that, in a few more million years, will start shaping stones into tools. For now, though, it's just fur and whiskers and wide, curious eyes. Small creatures taking their chance in a world rebuilt from ashes. They don't know it yet, but they've just been handed the keys to Earth's next great chapter. The mammals are thriving, but the world still feels restless, as though Earth itself can't sit still. You step forward through the haze of time, and suddenly, the temperature plummets. The ground crunches beneath your feet, not with leaves but with ice. Towering glaciers loom over the horizon, stretching mile after mile, grinding down mountains into gravel. Welcome to the Ice Age's Earth's version of repeatedly cranking the thermostat down just to see who survives. The cold bites at your skin, your breath fogging the air, and you tug an imaginary blanket tighter around your shoulders. Mammoths trudge across the tundra nearby, their shaggy coats thick as wool rugs, tusks curling like ivory scythes. Their heavy feet sink into the snow, leaving deep prints that will be buried in ice for millennia. Beside them, herds of bison plow through the frost, searching for stubborn patches of grass. It's a scene both harsh and oddly peaceful, like a frozen painting. Mainstream historical fact: the Pleistocene Ice Age began about 2.6 million years ago and cycled through multiple glacial and interglacial periods. Ice sheets spread across huge portions of North America, Europe, and Asia, locking up so much water that sea levels dropped by hundreds of feet. If you've ever walked along a coastline, you might have unknowingly stood on land that was once deep underwater. And here's your quirky tidbit: early humans didn't just fight the cold with furs and fire. Archaeologists believe some groups may have used mammoth bones as building material, stacking ribs and tusks into crude shelters. Imagine cozying up inside what's basically a giant bone igloo. Talk about extreme home makeover. Historians still argue whether volcanic eruptions, shifting ocean currents, or subtle changes in Earth's orbit triggered these glacial cycles. Was it one factor, or all of them colluding like mischievous roommates, flipping the thermostat back and forth? The debate continues. But one thing's certain: the ice ages were brutal testing grounds for life amid the cold. One peculiar primate begins to stand out. You see them huddled around a flickering fire, our ancestors. Small bands of Homo erectus, or perhaps Homo habilis, depending on the time slice you peek into. Their hands clutch crude stone tools, flakes chipped carefully into edges, sharp enough to slice hide or scrape marrow from bones. The glow of the fire reflects in their eyes, and you feel it. Something's different here. Fire, that's the real superpower. The moment humans learned to control it, everything changed. They could cook food, which meant more nutrients. They could ward off predators, stretch their waking hours into the night, and survive winters that would have killed them otherwise. Fire was humanity's first great invention. And honestly, it was also our first great flex. You crouch closer, and the smoke stings your eyes. The smell of roasting meat drifts up, and you imagine what a revelation that must have been food: softer, tastier, safer. No wonder this species thrived. And with every bite, their brains grew just a little sharper, their thoughts a little more complex. And here's where sarcasm slips in. Humans like to brag about inventing Wi-Fi and electric cars. But let's be real. The biggest leap was probably when some half-frozen ancestor figured out how to stop burning their fingers and actually use fire. Every app on your phone traces back to that campfire. You keep wandering through these icy landscapes. Lions stalk mammoths on snowy plains. Saber-toothed cats prowl in silence, and giant ground sloths slumber awkwardly under the weight of their bulk. Earth feels like a prehistoric mash-up of every animal documentary you've ever seen. Yet despite the danger humans spread, they adapt. They learn to stitch furs into clothing, chip flint into spears, and paint stories on cave walls. The stars shine brilliantly above, unpolluted by city lights. You watch a small group of humans huddle under them, whispering to one another, maybe telling myths about the glowing patterns above. The air is freezing, their lives are short. But you sense something stirring in their minds, a hunger, not just for food, but for meaning. The ice age is cruel, yes, but it's also a forge. The glaciers sculpt mountains, carve valleys, and shape rivers, while the cold chisels humanity into something tougher, cleverer, more determined. By the time the ice retreats, these little bands of firemakers won't just be survivors, they'll be dreamers. And dreamers are dangerous. You let the snowflakes melt on your skin and glance back at the mammoths, the fire, the frozen expanse. The age of ice and fire has pushed humanity to the edge. And in that struggle, something irreversible has begun. Clever apes are no longer just surviving. They're starting to imagine. The ice recedes, rivers swell, and valleys bloom again. You step forward through time, and suddenly the world feels warmer. Softer, greener. Those little bands of fire keepers have spread, their numbers swelling. Their stone tools clinking against bone and wood. And then something remarkable happens. Instead of moving endlessly across the land, chasing herds or digging roots, humans stop. They plant. They stay. Civilization's shaky start begins right here. With dirt under fingernails and seeds pressed into soil. You walk among one of the earliest villages. A cluster of huts near the banks of the Tigris or the Nile, or maybe along the Indus. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Goats bleat in pens and children chase each other through the dust. People are no longer just hunters. They're farmers. Wheat and barley sprout in carefully tended plots, while clay jars store grain against the lean months. It feels cozy in a way, but also fragile, like one bad season could topple the whole experiment. Mainstream historical fact: the Neolithic Revolution, about 12,000 years ago, marked humanity's shift from nomadic life to agriculture. This wasn't a single aha moment, but a slow spread of farming across different regions: wheat in the Fertile Crescent, rice in China, maize in the Americas. With farming came permanent settlements, and with settlements came surplus food. More food meant more people. More people meant bigger villages, and eventually cities. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some evidence suggests that beer, not bread, might have been one of the real driving forces behind early farming. Imagine that humanity settling down because they wanted a reliable way to brew grain into something a little more exciting than water. Civilization, brought to you by Happy Hour. Historians still argue whether farming was truly a blessing or a curse. On one hand, it allowed for population growth and technological progress. On the other, it locked humans into hard labor, long hours, and dependency on crops that could fail. Hunter-gatherers, in contrast, may have worked fewer hours and enjoyed more varied diets. So was agriculture the dawn of progress or the start of humanity's biggest mistake? The debate lingers. You crouch beside a farmer stooping over a patch of barley. His hands are cracked, his back bent, but his eyes shine with focus. The harvest means survival, but it also means taxes from the local chieftain, and maybe raids from a neighboring tribe. Farming tied humans not only to the land, but also to systems of power. And with villages came walls, temples, and markets. You wander through a bustling settlement, where potters shape clay, weavers spin wool, and merchants argue over the weight of grain. It smells of smoke, sweat, and freshly baked bread. It's noisy, chaotic, alive. Then, in the cool shade of a mud brick house, you spot painted figures on the wall: hunters chasing deer, spirals, handprints. Humans haven't abandoned their art. They've just changed their canvas. Storytelling, myth, and ritual grow alongside crops, reminding you that civilization isn't just about feeding bodies, it's about feeding minds. Here's where the gentle sarcasm creeps in. You might think of yourself as advanced, scrolling on your phone and ordering takeout. But really, you're still living off the same principle. These early farmers discovered: domesticate food, store it, hope it lasts, repeat. Civilization is basically one giant meal prep plan that got out of hand. Night falls, and the village gathers around a central fire. Someone strums a primitive lyre. Voices rise in song. and stories of ancestors ripple through the night air. The people laugh, argue, trade, and dream. They don't know it, but they've set in motion forces that will shape everything: property, class, religion, war. The first villages are delicate, yes, but they carry a weight that feels permanent. You sit in the firelight, the smell of bread thick in the air, and realize humanity has passed a threshold. No more drifting endlessly with the herds. From here on out, the land itself will be bent to human will. And though it seems small now, this shaky start is the seed of empires. You walk onward, and suddenly the villages swell around you, walls grow taller. Streets straighten, and the sound of footsteps on stone replaces the crunch of dirt. Civilization, once a fragile sprout, now bursts into bloom with cities, kings, and sprawling empires. Humanity is no longer just surviving. It's organizing, conquering, and arguing about taxes. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats rise like stepped mountains, their tops scraping the clouds. Priests shuffle up the staircases with offerings, hoping the gods aren't too grumpy this season. You wander into a bustling marketplace. Merchants hawk wool, pottery, and spices while children dart between stalls. The hum of voices blends with the bray of donkeys and the slap of sandals on stone. Somewhere in the corner, a scribe leans over a clay tablet, scratching wedge-shaped cuneiform into its surface. That scratching, the first writing system. Mainstream historical fact. Writing emerged in Mesopotamia around 5,000 years ago, primarily to keep track of grain, livestock, and trade. Bureaucracy, not poetry, was humanity's first reason to invent the alphabet soup. Only later did scribes start recording myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh, giving us one of the oldest surviving stories in the world. Quirky tidbit: the ancient Romans had a recipe for concrete that was so durable. Many of their structures still stand today, outperforming some modern cement. Historians joke that Roman aqueducts will outlast modern highways. Imagine driving through a pothole and muttering, "Should have used the Roman mix." Historians still argue whether the rise of centralized states was progress or oppression. On one hand, empires built roads, aqueducts, libraries, and wonders like the pyramids. On the other, they demanded heavy taxes, enslaved millions, and waged wars that swallowed entire generations. Was civilization the pinnacle of human achievement, or just a fancier way of keeping peasants in line? You wander into ancient Egypt. At the edge of the Nile, farmers bend their backs under the sun, irrigating fields with carefully dug canals. Behind them, colossal pyramids scrape the horizon, tombs designed to immortalize pharaohs. Inside one, the air smells of dust and resin. Walls covered in painted gods and spells to guide a soul into the afterlife. You step back into the daylight, blinded by the brilliance of stone blocks stacked with impossible precision. Move east, and you find the Great Wall snaking across mountains, built by countless laborers to keep enemies at bay. In Greece, marble columns rise. Philosophers argue under olive trees, and athletes strip down for the Olympics, because apparently running faster works better when you're naked. Over in Rome, the Colosseum roars with the sound of gladiators clashing while crowds cheer, their voices echoing like thunder. And yet, beneath the grandeur, ordinary life ticks on. You sit with a potter shaping clay on a wheel, his hands steady, his eyes focused. You watch a farmer lead his oxen through the fields, cursing at rocks in the soil. You listen to a mother hush her child with a lullaby that feels timeless, like every parent you've ever known. Empires may rise and fall, but daily life is stitched together with simple, human threads. Here comes the sarcasm. empires love to carve eternal monuments, bragging that their glory will never fade. Spoiler alert, it always does. Rome falls, Egypt wanes, dynasties crumble. The lesson? Never trust a ruler who says, "This time, it'll last forever." As night settles over an ancient city, oil lamps flicker in doorways, shadows dancing across mud brick walls. Musicians pluck strings, lovers sneak glances in the crowd, and priests mutter prayers to unseen gods. The city hums with life, ambition, and fragility. You sit on a stone step, listening to the laughter and the footsteps, and realize this chapter of humanity is louder, busier, and more ambitious than any before. But like every age before it, this one will pass. The walls will crumble, the scripts will fade, and the once mighty streets will fall silent. Yet in the ruins, stories will remain, waiting for someone, maybe even you, to wander through and remember. The city dust fades, and as you walk forward, something sharp and metallic glints in the sun. You hear the clang of hammer on anvil, sparks flying in every direction. The Stone Age is long gone now. Humanity wields metal. Bronze at first, then iron, then steel. The world feels harder, sharper, hungrier. You pass through a battlefield where soldiers raise bronze-tipped spears, their shields clashing as they form tight phalanxes. The air smells of sweat, fear, and blood. Horses scream, chariots thunder past, and for a moment you wonder if humans invented metal just to make better ways of stabbing each other. And honestly, you might not be wrong. Mainstream historical fact: the Bronze Age began around 3300 BC, marked by stronger tools and weapons that transformed farming, warfare, and trade. But the real leap came with iron, around 1200 BCE, when societies discovered how to smelt a metal both tougher and more abundant. Suddenly, empires with iron weapons steamrolled neighbors still swinging bronze. Quirky tidbit? Vikings, yes. The horn helmet stereotype, which, by the way, is a myth, were known to carry Ulfbert swords. These were so high quality, some historians joke they were the medieval equivalent of owning a luxury sports car. Imagine pulling up to battle with a blade so advanced that enemies gasp like, "Whoa, where'd you get that?" Historians still argue whether metallurgy spread mainly through trade, migration, or independent invention in different regions. Did everyone stumble onto fire-hot smelting pits around the same time? Or did secrets leak out from a few brilliant blacksmiths? The debate is still glowing, as hot as the furnaces themselves. You step inside a forge. The heat licks your skin, bellows wheeze air into flames, and molten metal glows like captured sunlight. A blacksmith hammers at an iron bar, sparks raining down like fireflies. Around him, apprentices rush with buckets of water, quenching glowing blades in hissing steam. It smells of charcoal, sweat, and hot iron, sharp, metallic, almost electric. Metal changes more than weapons. Farmers now till deeper with iron plows, coaxing richer harvests from stubborn soil. Merchants trade coins stamped with rulers' faces. A new kind of currency that jingles in leather pouches. The jingle spreads empires reach farther than swords ever could. Money, as it turns out, can conquer too. And yet, with every leap comes sarcasm's reminder. Humans brag about innovation, but they often use it first to figure out, how can I hit that guy harder? Fire, stone, bronze. Iron, it's a recurring pattern of progress mixed with violence. The universe must be rolling its eyes. You wander into a Greek workshop, where artisans hammer helmets that will one day march into history books. In China, Metallurgists craft delicate bronze vessels etched with intricate dragons. Not for war, but for ritual. Over in Africa, ironworking spreads through the Nak culture, reshaping economies and cultures far beyond Europe's borders. Night falls, and a campfire burns outside a soldier's tent. He sharpens his sword, his eyes tired, his voice low as he murmurs to comrades. They joke about the next day's march. They curse their commanders, they sip bitter wine. It's a moment of humanity amid the clash of empires. A reminder that behind every weapon is a person just trying to get by. The stars overhead shimmer, cold and silent, watching as humans continue their noisy experiments with fire and steel. You realize metal is more than just tools, it's a symbol. It speaks of ambition, of hunger, of the human need to mold the world into something sharper, stronger, more permanent, and yet, nothing is permanent. Even steel rusts. You brush your fingers along a discarded blade, half buried in the dirt, its edge dulled by time. Empires rise with metal, but they'll fall too. The forge may roar today, but tomorrow silence will return. The clang of the forge fades, replaced by the sound of turning wheels, crackling flames, and the rhythmic chuff of pistons. You've stepped into a world transformed again, where smoke rises not from campfires but from tall chimneys, where fields give way to factories, and where the hum of human ambition grows deafening. The industrial age has arrived, and with it, humanity's obsession with machines. You walk along a cobblestone street in 18th century England. The air smells of coal, damp wool, and hot iron. Children dart barefoot between workers, their faces smudged with soot. Looms clatter inside textile mills, their wooden frames pounding like giant mechanical hearts. For the first time in history, more people crowd into cities than spread across the countryside. Humanity's pace has quickened. Mainstream historical fact, the Industrial Revolution, beginning around the late 1700s, revolutionized production with steam engines, mechanized looms, and coal-powered factories. It transformed economies from agrarian to industrial, spurred mass urbanization, and laid the foundation for the modern world. Railroads stretched like veins across continents, moving people and goods at speeds that once seemed impossible. Quirky tidbit: in Victorian London, chimney sweeps were often young boys small enough to crawl through flues, and sometimes they'd play a game called "Who can pop out of the chimney the fastest?" It was dangerous, filthy, and let's be honest, probably not the kind of childhood game you'd want to win. Historians still argue whether industrialization was more of a blessing or a curse. On one hand, it brought medicine, mass literacy, electricity, and eventually modern comforts. On the other, it created smog-choked cities, exploited laborers, and sparked class struggles that still echo today. Was the industrial age humanity's great leap forward, or just a faster treadmill to exhaustion? You wander into a factory, where steam hisses from pipes and gears groan with every rotation. Men and women work in shifts, their hands raw from handling machines, their eyes heavy with fatigue. The noise is relentless, a hammering symphony that drowns out thought. Yet amid the chaos, there's the sheer scale of production, the sense that the world itself has grown bigger and faster. Trains scream by on steel tracks, their whistles splitting the night air. You hop aboard, the engine rumbling beneath you, and suddenly the countryside blurs into streaks of green and gray. People who once lived and died within a few miles of their birthplace now travel across nations in a single day. Space collapses. Time speeds up. Here's your sarcastic aside: humanity. finally figured out how to make machines do the heavy lifting, and immediately used them to invent longer workdays. Congratulations, you're free from hand-plowing fields. But enjoy your 14-hour shift in the textile mill. But not everything is smoke and drudgery. The 19th century also brings sparks of wonder, gas lamps, lighting city streets, hot air balloons rising into the sky, and telegraphs tapping out messages across continents. What hath God wrought? Samuel Morse once sent in 1844. And you can almost imagine the modern equivalent. First text message, lol. The debates rage not only in factories, but in books and salons. Karl Marx scribbles about class struggle, while inventors like James Watt and Nikola Tesla dream of machines that will free humanity from toil. Some dreamers insist machines will make life easier. Others warn they'll make humans slaves to their own creations. You step outside a factory town at dusk. The horizon glows red with coal fires, and the air tastes of ash. Yet in the distance, you see new silhouettes rising, suspension bridges, glass-roofed train stations, the first skyscrapers. Humans are reaching higher, faster, further. A worker coughs beside you, his lungs blackened from coal dust. He grins anyway, proud of the locomotive he helped build. His pride feels like the essence of this age, weary but unstoppable. Humanity has hitched itself to machines, for better or worse. The stars still hang above, unchanged, watching this noisy new chapter unfold. You wonder if they laugh at the sight of humans, scrambling to tame fire again, this time inside engines. Pistons, turbines. The same story, retold with smoke and steel. You close your eyes against the glare of gas lamps, and in the rhythmic pounding of factory machines, you hear the pulse of a species racing forward, perhaps too fast. The coal smoke clears, and the factory clang fades into something brighter, humming wires, glowing screens, and the faint buzz of electricity weaving through the air. You've walked straight into the modern era, where technology doesn't just shape tools or machines, but rewrites the fabric of daily life. You stand in a city, lit up like daylight even at midnight. Neon signs flicker, car horns blare, and overhead, airplanes carve white trails across the sky. Humanity now commands not only steam and coal, but oil, electricity, and silicon. The pace quickens yet again. Mainstream historical fact, the 20th century saw more technological progress than any period before it. Cars, airplanes, nuclear power, television, computers, and the internet. In less than 100 years, humans leapt from horse-drawn wagons to rockets piercing space. That's not just progress. That's hitting the cosmic fast-forward button. Quirky tidbit? The first computer bug was literally a moth trapped inside Harvard's Mark II computer in 1947. A technician taped it to the logbook. And yes, that's where the term debugging comes from. Imagine telling that to your laptop while it crashes. Don't worry, I'll just check for moths. Historians still argue whether technology liberates humans or enslaves them in new ways. Did cars, phones, and the internet bring freedom, or just new chains of dependency? Distraction and pollution? Is progress inevitable? Or is it a choice humanity keeps making without reading the fine print? You sit in a living room in the 1950s. A black and white TV glows, broadcasting the moon landing, while a family stares wide-eyed. One small step for man crackles through the speakers, and you feel goosebumps. For the first time, millions of humans share a single moment, a collective memory stitched by technology. Move ahead a few decades, and you're in a cluttered garage in California. Two kids tinker with circuit boards, dreaming of personal computers on every desk. Their hobby will transform into Apple and Microsoft. A little later, the internet sparks to life. First a quiet whisper between universities, then a roar that engulfs the globe. You pull out a smartphone because, of course, you have one now and realize you're holding more computing power than NASA had when it sent astronauts to the moon. You can scroll through memes while someone in 1969 had to calculate orbital mechanics by hand. Priorities, right? The sarcastic aside practically writes itself. Humans invented the internet, the single most powerful information network in history, and immediately used it for cat videos and arguing with strangers. Aristotle must be rolling in his toga. And yet, beneath the jokes, the modern world pulses with wonder. Electric lights stretch the day. Airplanes shrink the globe. Satellites orbit overhead. And robotic rovers trundle across. Mars, humans have turned imagination into reality. So quickly that even science fiction can't keep up. But shadows creep in too. The mushroom cloud of nuclear weapons looms over the 20th century, a reminder that progress cuts both ways. For the first time, humans hold the power not just to shape the planet, but to erase themselves entirely. The Cold War, balance of terror, is both terrifying and absurd entire. Superpowers glaring at each other with buttons they promised never to press. You wander into the late-night glow of a server farm. Rows of machines blink softly, like a field of mechanical fireflies. The hum is steady, almost soothing. Yet you sense the weight of billions of lives, coursing through those wires' bank accounts. Conversations, secrets, dreams. The digital age hums, relentless and fragile. Somewhere, a programmer yawns, sipping lukewarm coffee. They're writing lines of code that might change the world or crash a website. Somewhere else, a child laughs at a cartoon streamed across the world in seconds. The ordinary and the extraordinary intertwine in every click, every ping, every hum of the modem. And as the night deepens, you can't help but wonder, has humanity truly advanced? Or just built shinier tools? Fire, wheel, steam. Silicon, the story feels familiar. Just louder, faster, brighter. The stars are still up there, unchanged, twinkling patiently as if saying, call us when you've figured it out. The server farm hum fades, and you step into the quiet glow of glowing screens. Not just tools anymore, but companions. Decision makers, and sometimes even gatekeepers. Humanity has entered the age of artificial intelligence and biotechnology, a time when the line between natural and artificial blurs so thin, it's hard to see where one ends and the other begins. You glance at a lab bench, where a researcher adjusts her glasses and peers at strands of DNA, displayed on a glowing monitor. The double helix twirls like a neon staircase, whispering the secrets of life itself. In another corner, a robotic arm carefully cultures cells, nurturing tiny organoids' miniature brains, the size of lentils that pulse with electrical activity. You wonder if they dream. Mainstream historical fact. The decoding of the human genome in 2003 was a watershed moment, giving humanity the ability to read and increasingly edit its own genetic code. Tools like CRISPR now let scientists cut and paste DNA, almost as easily as text on a computer. Medicine, agriculture, and maybe even evolution itself are suddenly editable. Quirky tidbit: in 2012, a team of scientists managed to implant a false memory into the brain of a mouse. Yes, you heard that right. Imagine waking up tomorrow convinced. You once fought a kangaroo in Australia, when really you've never left your hometown. Memory, it seems, is as hackable as a password. Historians still argue whether technology like AI and gene editing will usher in a utopia of health and abundance, or a dystopia of surveillance, inequality, and bioengineered mistakes. Will we cure cancer, or will we accidentally invent glow-in-the-dark toddlers? The jury's out. You stroll into a startup's office, where coders hunch over glowing screens, coaxing algorithms into something resembling thought. A chatbot chirps back responses eerily conversational. An image generator sketches lifelike faces that don't exist. A neural net analyzes billions of data points, spotting patterns invisible to human eyes. For a moment, you feel like you're walking among apprentice gods. The sarcastic aside comes easy. Humans wanted to build machines to do their chores. Now they're nervously checking if the machines will take their jobs, their art, maybe even their role in the story. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. But the awe is undeniable. Artificial intelligence already drives cars, translates languages, diagnoses illnesses, and composes music. In some cases, it creates things that even surprise its creators. It's as if the tools are starting to whisper, "Beck, what if we don't need you as much as you think?" Meanwhile, biotechnology tugs at the deepest roots of existence. Scientists debate whether it's ethical to edit embryos, whether designer babies cross a line, whether life itself should be rewritten. Somewhere in a greenhouse, crops are engineered to survive droughts that climate change is already making worse. Somewhere in a hospital, a patient receives an organ grown in a lab. Somewhere in a quiet corner, an ethicist sighs and scribbles in frustration. And the stars? They're still watching, maybe with more curiosity now, seeing a species not only changing its environment, but rewriting its own blueprint. You can almost imagine them whispering, "Careful. You're editing the script while still acting on stage." The air smells sterile, faintly of antiseptic and ozone. Machines beep softly, glowing with data streams. For a moment, you sit in the lab, feeling both comforted and uneasy. Comforted that diseases may one day vanish. Uneasy that humanity may vanish into its own inventions. Then again, maybe that's the pattern. Fire once seemed dangerous too, until it became part of dinner. Perhaps AI and biotech are just the next chapters, sharp, risky, but inevitable. The hum of machines follows you out the lab door, into a night where satellites blink overhead. Algorithms monitor traffic, and DNA itself hums like a hidden code beneath your skin. The story continues, sharper, stranger, and somehow still the same. The lab doors ease shut, and you find yourself standing beneath a sky filled with satellites, streaks of light arcing across the black canvas. Humanity has climbed from sticks and fire to silicon and spacefaring machines. And now it stares outward, wondering if it has a future among the stars, or if the Earth will simply move on without it. You step into a quiet launch facility. A massive rocket waits on the pad, its body gleaming in the floodlights, as though it knows it's about to escape gravity's pull. Engineers whisper into headsets. A countdown ticks, and the ground shakes as fire blossoms beneath the engines. The rocket rises, slow and heavy at first, then faster, tearing through clouds, leaving only smoke and silence behind. Humanity has never been content with staying put. Mainstream historical fact: in 1969, humans set foot on the moon. The culmination of a race between superpowers and a dream as old as myth. Only 12 people have ever walked on its surface, and none since 1972 Still, the moment remains etched in history, a reminder that Earth was never the limit. Quirky tidbit: astronauts returning from the moon said their spacesuits smelled like gunpowder after lunar dust clung to them. Imagine explaining that to customs. Anything to declare? Yes, just a faint smell of cosmic gunpowder. Historians still argue whether the space age is humanity's destiny or just an expensive detour. Are humans meant to spread across the stars? Or are they stubbornly ignoring the fact that they can't even manage their home planet very well? The debate feels endless, hopeful, and a little tragic. You drift through time again, glimpsing Martian rovers trundling across red dust, satellites snapping pictures of hurricanes from orbit, and telescopes peering deeper into the universe than any eye ever could. Each invention is a kind of mirror humans, trying to see not just the cosmos but themselves, reflected in the vastness. And yet, there's a question lingering like smoke. What if humanity is just a phase? A brief bright spark in Earth's long story? Dinosaurs once ruled for millions of years, their bones now resting beneath your feet. Perhaps one day, future beings will dig up smartphones, fossilized skyscrapers, and wonder what strange creatures built them. Your sarcastic aside. Humans love to think they're the main characters of Earth's story, but the planet has hosted way bigger celebrities. I mean, trilobites were headlining for 270 million years. Humans have been fumbling with smartphones for, what, 2 decades? Perspective, people, but still, humanity's mark is undeniable. Fire, stone, steam, silicon. DNA, each step stitched into Earth's fabric, shaping landscapes and rewriting futures. Whether fleeting or eternal, humans have carved themselves into the planet's memory. You wander into the silence of space, where Earth hangs below, blue and fragile, its continents glowing faintly with city lights. It spins quietly, indifferent to the dramas unfolding on its surface. The oceans shimmer, the forests breathe, the deserts sleep. Earth doesn't care whether humans last another 1,000 years or vanish tomorrow. Its story will continue, with or without them. And here, in that silence, the narration softens. You feel the long arc of time stretching far beyond your own life, beyond your species, into something endless. Maybe humans are a chapter. Maybe they're a footnote. Maybe they're just the spark that lights the page before the story turns again. The stars above flicker, patient, unhurried. They've seen species rise and fall, worlds form and shatter. They'll keep shining long after human lights go dark. And still, there's comfort in knowing you're part of that vastness. Even briefly, you close your eyes. The rocket's roar fades, the hum of machines stills, and all that remains is the steady breath of the Earth turning beneath you. And now, as the last echoes of the story drift away, you settle into stillness. The pace slows, the words stretch longer, softer, easier to follow. You've walked through firelight and stone, through steel and silicon, through rockets and code. You've glimpsed the vastness of time, and you've seen how brief a human life truly is against it. But that thought isn't heavy, it's freeing. Because in knowing you're a small part of something immense, you can let go of the need to race, to prove, to cling. You can simply rest, trusting that the Earth will keep turning. The stars will keep shining, and the story will go on. Breathe slowly now, deeper, calmer. Picture yourself floating gently above the planet, the blue ocean stretching out, the forests whispering beneath clouds. Everything is quiet here, safe, timeless. Each exhale lets go of the day, each inhale gathers peace. The edges of thought begin to blur, like ink spreading on water. The questions fade, the debates quiet. You don't need to solve what comes next or where humanity fits in the grand story. You only need to drift, weightless, wrapped in the hum of the universe itself. Sleep comes like a tide, pulling you softly inward. The stars above remain, steady and kind, watching over your dreams. And as you sink into rest, you carry with you not answers, but a gentle sense of wonder that life, however fleeting, is still luminous, still part of the great unfolding. So rest now. The earth is still spinning. The story continues. And you, for tonight, can simply dream.